Welcome back to the eGov Summit. The Yacine Mayoral Roundtable is next. Please help me welcome Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Gimenez, Lieutenant Governor of Florida Carlos Lopez-Cantera, City of Miami Mayor Francis Suarez, the Mayor of Jalapa, Guatemala, Mario Alejandro Estrada, General Secretary of the Cozumel Municipal Government of Quintana Roo, Mexico, Dora, Patricia, Uribe, Jimenez, General Director of Informatics Management at Argentina's Ministry of Education and Sports, Ricardo Spartano, General Manager of Florida for Lyft, Sam Cohen, who, by the way, is from Venezuela, Director of National Strategy of the Knight Foundation, Lilian, shareholder at Greenberg Traurig, Carlos Lago, and last but certainly not least, our moderator, political reporter from the Miami Herald, David Smiley. How about a round of applause for our panelists?
You can make us all wait. Well, thank you for having us here. We're excited to talk about technology and government, particularly as it relates to transit. And because I was watching Westworld last night and they used facial recognition software, I figured I would ask our county mayor a question about Miami International Airport's recent adoption of facial recognition technology in Concourse E. So I'm curious, how is that working, and how is the county dealing with any privacy concerns?
Well, it's working very well. And we use facial recognition in order to expedite the time it takes somebody who's coming on an international flight to go through our Customs and Border Patrol process. And so one of the complaints that we've been having from passengers is that the length of time it takes to do that. So we've come up with some pretty innovative programs with the Customs and Border Patrol. We installed kiosks where citizens can basically swipe their passports and expedite that time there and really drastically reduce it. What this facial recognition does, it verifies that the individual is who they say they are, and the Customs and Border Patrol agent then can compare the two and then basically clear you through much faster. We can do, I believe we can do 10 facial recognitions per minute. That means one every 6 seconds. And so we'll be expanding the facial recognition aspect throughout the airport for not only for Customs and Border Patrol, but for other uses as well.
What's the rollout timeline that the county expects?
Well, it's already in use right now. And so I believe we're testing it out on one of the Customs and Border Patrol areas, when we have various several in the airport, depending on what concourse you came in on, what terminal you came in on. But eventually, it will be throughout that process. We'll be using facial recognition, like I said, and then we may be using facial recognition. I think you'll see more and more facial recognition being used in a variety of different processes, not only at the airport but other places too.
I'm fascinated with the use of biometrics in government, and I wonder for the state or the city or any other government if there's any discussion about expanding the use of fingerprints, facial recognition, anything like that in terms of biometrics to help facilitate your government.
Buenas tardes a todos, muchas gracias. Vengo de Cozumel, Quintana Roo. Nos gustaría muchísimo contar con ese tipo de tecnología. Aún nosotros estamos en la transición de la tecnología incipiente. Es una isla, está en el sureste de México. Somos alrededor de 80,000 habitantes y en realidad apenas estamos iniciando de lo que eran las hojas de Excel, por denominarle de alguna manera, a la nueva tecnología. Tenemos por primera vez fibra óptica en el gobierno, en el Palacio Municipal, y por lo tanto pues estamos mejorando, ya tenemos una plataforma, ya tenemos un contacto directo con todos los ciudadanos No tenemos desafortunadamente una tecnología más avanzada en cuanto al reconocimiento de rostros. Nos gustaría muchísimo. La seguridad en Cozumel es algo muy importante y estamos trabajando apenas para los arcos de seguridad en los 2 muelles de entrada de Cozumel y en el aeropuerto, pero nos encantaría tenerla.
Can I get a rough translation for anyone who doesn't speak Spanish here?
I think what she's basically saying is that she'd love to be able to implement some of the technology that the mayor is doing at Miami-Dade County, but that sometimes they don't have the resources that maybe they would in another part that the county would have.
In Cozumel. So, Carlos Lago, I want to maybe transition to you, and I'm curious, from your perspective, you represent private clients and you work with government. How can the private sector work with the public sector to encourage the use of technology to improve transit and government services?
So government needs to continue to implement public policy that encourages private sector initiatives and development that improves transit overall. They also need to continue to partner with the private sector to facilitate emerging technology such as autonomous cars and what the mayor did, that great initiative with Ford Motor. This is the first time that Ford has its feet in self-driving cars, and the first test site is Miami-Dade County. So that's a great win for Miami-Dade County. We also need to expand current transit solutions. Public policy such as TODs. We have governments have done a good job so far of implementing policy that incentivizes private sector developments that help improve transit. So for example, transit-oriented developments. Many governments have created incentives for developers to build in TODs. These are areas that are close to transportation hubs, close to higher dense areas, but they also have less parking. So we know that less parking, for example, for transit purposes, is linked to less car ownership and use. So it reduces car ownership and use by 25%. So what we've seen at the city of Miami, for example, in 2010, when they passed Miami 21, 100% parking reduction for cars in the downtown urban core. And we've expanded that just not too long ago from 30 to 50% throughout the city within transit corridors that the mayor was a leader in that. We also see joint developments in the transit-oriented development areas with the county and private sector parties, such as the Bright Lines Grand Central project and also the Grass River project. So we should continue to partner with the private sector and facilitate emerging technologies because ultimately the private sector is the best equipped with knowledge and resources to expand on that technology quickly and efficiently. Other examples are smart traffic solutions, signals. This is an interconnected network, and I think this is something that the county is looking at. An interconnected network of smart traffic signals that are equipped with computers and radars that react quickly to traffic conditions and patterns and could downstream throughout the corridors, through transit corridors, report back. So these are the kind of things that government should be working on to facilitate and support technology that will better transit and that will alleviate our traffic conditions in Miami-Dade County.
Gotcha.
Can I help there?
Yeah, Sam, jump in, please.
I would like to second some of what you were saying in terms of partnering with local governments and public transportation. For example, in the case of rideshare, we don't see ourselves as competitors of those services. We see ourselves as totally complementative of those services. So I think there's a lot that we can do, for example, on our side to help with first mile, last mile of different methods of public transportation. And to add something else, another way in which the private sector and the public sector can partner together is also on disaster relief. During Irma, we enabled a we at Lyft enabled a $100,000 relief fund for relief rides, and we offered that to local governments. And I remember that Mayor Francis, back when he was a commissioner, he was actually working hard to actually provide solutions to the people on the ground, and he actually used one of our services to provide relief rides during Irma. So yeah, that's another example of how we can partner.
Mayor Jimenez, Mr. Lago brought up the Ford program. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that?
Well, as most people know, at least that know something about me, know that I love technology. I think that technology can solve a lot of the world's problems if handled correctly. And so I've been very interested in autonomous vehicles and the development of autonomous vehicles and how that can help improve the quality of life of our residents. And so we partnered with Ford and advised them that we would be willing to be a test bed, that we wanted to be a test bed. And so the laws here in the state of Florida, thanks a large part to our lieutenant governor, are pretty liberal when it comes to autonomous vehicles and how autonomous vehicles are treated in the state. And so that allowed us to partner with Ford, and Ford right now is in the streets doing various things. Number one, they're mapping the entire county, and that's critical for an area to be autonomous vehicle ready. Number two, they're also testing out various concepts, like if an autonomous vehicle delivered a pizza to you, would you be willing to go outside and get the pizza? Okay, and how do you get that pizza out of the vehicle with has no driver? And by the way, in the city of Miami, where they have all these high rises, would you be willing to go downstairs to pick up your pizza versus having it delivered to your apartment? And so that and other aspects of how autonomous vehicles are going to work are being tested here in Miami-Dade. What we get is we will be one of the first cities to be completely mapped out. And that, again, is critical. Now, they're mapping it out with LiDAR, and I think they're also mapping it out with visuals. And so those are the two technologies, really. Those are the sensing technologies that are going to be used with these autonomous vehicles. And so I really wanted us to be first because we understand, or I was told that maybe autonomy, full autonomy, level 5 autonomy may be ready between 5 and 10 years, but level 4 autonomy is going to be ready much sooner. And level 4 autonomy needs that mapping of the area in order to take advantage of it. And for me, it's another option on how to solve our transportation problems. It's not the solution; it's an option. Just like Lyft and Uber are options. Train option, buses options. That's what we want. Give as many options as possible in order to really start to solve our transportation problems.
Mayor Suarez, would you be willing to go down from the top floor of a condo to get a pizza out of a driverless car?
I would have to think about it. No, I'm just kidding. No, of course. I think all our residents would. I think what the mayor said is, there are some limitations to the autonomous vehicles, and I think as the technology continues to progress, those barriers are coming down. The one that is always a difficult one is what they call the moral choice, or if an autonomous vehicle has to choose between two very difficult decisions. But I think what I've read about them is their sensing technology is so advanced that they can actually predict what's going to happen. And so that allows them not to get into a situation where they have to make a moral choice. And so people often ask me, well, how are they going to decide? Well, if you don't have to get yourself in a situation, if you slow down in advance of seeing somebody that might jump in front of you, or if you can, based on the way their movement patterns are, you can determine which way they're going to move. Are they going to move forward? Are they going to stop? Are they going to, that allows you to make decisions that with plenty of time so that you don't have to be in a situation where you have to make a difficult choice.
One thing I wonder that maybe it's harder to see the forest for the trees here in Miami, maybe Lilian, you can help us with this, is what are we seeing in other parts of the country? Data technology in terms of mass transit, multimodal transit that we're learning about in terms of transportation. Is there anything that we can look to outside of Miami that we should be doing here?
Yeah, I think a lot of cities across the U.S. are struggling with the same issues, which is, one, how do we better leverage all of the data that's currently available and do it in a responsible way, respecting citizens' privacies, et cetera. So how do we leverage all that? How do we also deploy these new technologies like autonomous vehicles on the road, again, responsibly, and really thinking about considerations like data sharing with private sector companies, between private sector companies and government. So I would just first start by saying that I think we're all in this exploratory phase across the U.S. No city has it won. And in many cases, you know, it's while we think some of the larger cities usually have an edge, sometimes our smaller cities are actually a better prepared to deploy a lot of this new technology because it's just a smaller scale for us to do experimentation. In terms of the kinds of technologies that we're seeing, obviously automation is a huge trend. We're seeing a lot of automation exploration, whether it be primarily actually in the commercial sector, because it just is a little bit easier to deploy. There's a lot of automation being considered in logistics and freight. And then we'll also start to hear more about drone delivery. So if you don't want to come downstairs, Mayor Suarez, the drone will take it up to you. But the other thing I think that we are really trying to figure out is how do we use data to really help do this trip planning, this multimodal approach. I think a lot of cities are really struggling with, especially large cities, getting people out of their cars and into public transit or into different kinds of transit. And one of the biggest challenges we all have is we don't really know we don't really know the trips that individuals and cities take, point A to point B. And that kind of origin destination data is really hard to capture. It's going to require companies like Lyft and Uber who have a better insight into this to help us really understand that. And then for cities to really think about how to creatively use that data to actually start to place services around where people actually get transit and not where we think they get transit. So I think we're still exploring and tapping into that. Miami-Dade is doing actually some wonderful things around data centralization with their new payment system that I think is very innovative in terms of can we centralize all the payment data and actually start to structure other data around that? And that's actually really quite smart, and not a lot of cities are necessarily doing that. So I think there's a lot to look to Miami for, and at night we're really curious to see how we get more solution-oriented and resident-centered with a lot of the technology that we're seeing deployed.
You mentioned freight and delivery, and I think often so much about transportation and transit, we get focused on getting stuck in our traffic jams behind our wheels, but we're also talking about shipping and goods and services. And I wonder for our members of the panel who are from other parts of the world, or for our county mayor, are we seeing any new technology when it comes to shipping, to our ports, to moving goods back and forth to agriculture, and what are we doing with that right now?
Well, first of all, thank you. I'm from Jalapa, Guatemala, and Guatemala is at Central America, and our country, as Cozumel in Mexico, it's 200,000 our population. So all the efforts that Miami right now is doing in technology and data and everything, we are at that capacity to make this type of project. So we already are. We have like an agriculture economy at Jalapa. It's an oriental part of Guatemala. So as local government, we are improving and making these approachments to make technology a part of the community, to give better spaces to our society, to make a better commerce in our type of products. I want to tell you that in Jalapa, we got right now orchards made in Jalapa that with high technology that Netherlands right now is implementing and to improve and facilitate all the commerce that we can make. So as a government, we wish we can make an effort in optic fiber so we can connect or make a connectivity to facilitate all the customers and make it approach to Miami and all the world.
Thank you. What about locally with our ports?
Well, I can say this. We've recently introduced with our federal partners and NOAA, we put a current sensing system at the at the mouth of our port. And why is that important? It's important to know what the currents are doing in order to be able to bring ships in, especially very heavily laden ships, in safely. Imagine if you're traveling on a ship, what a ship does when it's going fast and it stops, it settles. And so we recently dredged our port to 52 feet. Sometimes these ships only have a foot or two of clearance. So it's vital that we understand the current, okay, at the port in order to make sure that those ships actually, get in smoothly and safely and with as much cargo as possible. So that's one thing that we recently put in. In my recent trip to the Far East, we witnessed a fully automated cargo terminal, completely fully automated, and it was in one of the largest ports in the world. Qingdao probably handles about 20 million TEUs. As an example, Miami handles about 1 million TEUs. So this is a port that handles 20 times the number of TEUs than we do, and part of their port is completely automated. And so that was to us very interesting to see, and we got some data on it. Look, if the United States is going to remain competitive in the world, we need to distribute our goods faster, quicker than our competitors. We also need to get our goods to market faster and quicker than our competitors. And so in the area of technology, really when you talk about autonomous vehicles, probably the first thing you're going to see a breakthrough in is in trucking. Large, convoys, caravans, platooning that will bring down the cost of shipping goods from around the nation. And so automation will be key to that, and the United States needs to be on top of that, or else we're going to lose our competitive advantage. If we do that, then we're going to lose jobs. And to me as mayor, and I know that the governor and lieutenant governor, and also anybody that's mayor, really what you want is jobs for your people, because that affects the quality of their life. So all of this has got technology is going to be a big part in our ability to remain competitive.
I would ask our lieutenant governor, you've been in public office for a while, and you're toward the end of your term, you're going to be a private citizen. You're seeing it from both perspectives now. What do you think, from your perspective, needs to happen going forward? What are some opportunities you might see in terms of technology, public and private partnerships?
Thank you, David. I'd like to thank the Melissa and Manny Medina for continuing to host eMerge and bringing thought leaders from technology and government and beyond together to have these conversations. Really quickly, the mayor gave a recognition to the governor and myself on the autonomous vehicle statutory framework of Florida, which we're proud that we have here. But I believe State Senator Jeff Brandes, who is here and who will be participating in a panel a little later, who was the visionary in the state legislature to push his colleagues to have that statutory framework. And now Florida is the most autonomous vehicle friendly state in the nation as far as its statutory framework, the laws that are in place. Going forward, looking at it, having served in local government and in state government, if you look at Florida, our economy is booming. And we are attracting 1,000 people a day to the state of Florida. And if you look at our population in Florida, which is 20.7 million people right now, we're the third largest state. You look at Miami-Dade County's population, 2.7 million. This is the largest county in the largest state. This county is larger than 15 states. But if you look at the population projections, by 2040, Florida could have a population of 28.7 million people, and Miami-Dade County could have 4 million people. And with more population comes more congestion, more pollution. And if you've been stuck in traffic like I have in any day of the week, more frustration. So preparing for the future and for the technology of the future, and if you look at what's happening in computing, neuromorphic, quantum computing, the predictive algorithms of today are going to seem dumb in comparison just a few years down the road of what computers can do and what computer chips can do as far as autonomous vehicle, smart cities. And one of the things I think that we need to do with the public is communicate and prepare them, because the infrastructure project to have the truly smart city of the future. We're talking electric mass transit vehicles, either buses, electric vehicles, electric cars for consumers. Inductive charging looks like it could be the way that the charging of these vehicles goes in the future. But to have inductive chargers throughout the city or throughout the county, that's a public works project that would need to start now to have it in place so that when these options hit the market, not only we aren't scrambling to adapt our infrastructure to accommodate, we're already ready. And I'm glad we have Mayor Gimenez as our mayor of the county and Mayor Suarez as our mayor of the city, because I know that they are both committed to these technology opportunities in the future. And one of the frustrations that I think they have, or maybe one of the concerns they have, and I'm glad that they have to make the decision, is when to know when to go. Because if I talk to this crowd and I ask this crowd, what does AR mean? You would all probably respond, augmented reality. And if you Google today AR, you'd get a whole bunch of articles and web pages about augmented reality. But 10 or 15 years ago, if you would have Googled AR, you might have come up with Mr. Spartano's office in Argentina, or a nice web page about Arkansas, because those are the abbreviations for Argentina and Arkansas. But if you think about how much our world has changed in the last 10 years, the iPhone was introduced just over 10 years ago. Think about your entertainment options, how you can binge watch. I mean, binge watching that term probably didn't even exist 5 years ago. So you think about how quickly and how disruptive technology has been, in a good way, to our lives, and how much quicker it's going to continue to move as the technology compounds upon itself. Picking which route to go, which technology, which mode of transportation for the public in making decisions on how to expend their dollars is one of the tough decisions that I think faces any leader in the years to come.
You know, Mayor Suarez, the sausage making of government preparing for new technology, though, can be ugly. The city before you were mayor got into a pretty public dispute with Airbnb. You know, I can probably bring up a couple other technological frictions in South Florida. How does government try to work and keep an open mind to accommodate and move forward with new technology?
Well, I agree. It can certainly be something that's resisted. I can tell you, when I brought ShotSpotter, and you were covering the city at the time, the police chief at the time that was not really an embracer of that technology. And we were an early adopter, and I sort of got the commission to buy in on this gunfire detection system. And now it's, when I go to U.S. Conference of Mayors, they want me to do testimonials for the company, because it's been so successful and it's been so universally accepted that now it's not something that's speculative in terms of technology. Our homicide rate, since we implemented it, has gone down about 35%. And what we're looking at now is a second generation. I've spoken to the mayor about this, particularly in light of some of the most recent gunfire incidents in the city of Miami. But we are always looking for ways to be more forward-thinking. And oftentimes that means, and it's changed a little bit now that I'm mayor, because obviously now I have the ability to select a manager, and the manager hopefully incorporates my ethic in that regard, and will select team members that are reflective of that as well. As a commissioner, it's harder, because you're just a legislator. And so you're trying to bring in products to the city that will innovate, that will allow the city to provide services more efficiently to its residents. So definitely, sometimes there's resistance on the bureaucratic end, what they call the immune system response, and sometimes there's resistance even from your colleagues who may not be right there with you, who may think it's not a good expenditure of funds, and so they might say, well, if you're going to spend a couple $100,000 on a gunfire detection system, why don't you just hire 2 police officers? And so you have to impress upon them the force multiplier that having a technological capability that this will provide you, how that will allow you to act as if you had an extra 5 or 10 or 15 police officers. So that's the economic analysis that I think we struggle with to educate our boards every single day.
Lilian?
Well, I just wanted to build on a couple of the points that have been made. So at the Knight Foundation, we just recently released our Smart City strategy, and when we tried to look at the role of philanthropy in all of this, we really wanted to complement what Mayor Suarez was just talking about, which is the kind of innovation that leaders like he and the mayor of the county are leading. But we thought that it was really important to actually invest at the citizen level on the outside, and this is to the lieutenant governor's point. There are way too many residents who really don't understand very much about this technology. When you talk about ShotSpotter, they have no idea what that is. And one of the deficiencies we're seeing in this area is that government doesn't have a whole lot of runway to run because there's no real demand on the outside for a lot of this. Very little expectation from citizens that their government can be innovative. So a lot of what we think philanthropy can and should do is actually complement these efforts. But we think obviously we all have to partner together to really make sure that the deployments that we're making, the technologies that we're pursuing, are really explained to citizens. Because if you don't engage them, then there's no support when you actually really need it to invest, to make the bigger investments that we actually need in the long run.
And I would just say, aside from the point that she just made, government as a risk taker is not a particularly good risk taker. We're very risk averse, and technology is inherently risky. And so when I brought ShotSpotter on, obviously I believed in the technology, I sold it, I advocated for it, but I certainly hope that the results would later on justify that expenditure, because if it didn't, then I would look really bad about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a technology that wasn't producing results. And so I think that's the second part, which is having elected officials that are willing to take risks and understanding that you're not going to succeed every time, but if you don't take chances, your government's never going to be progressive on technology.
And I think covering one of your city meetings, there was a new law coming about drones and registering drones and monitoring drones. And there was a video on screen of a drone roasting a turkey with a flamethrower. And at that meeting, it did get me thinking about government really grappling with new technology and how to regulate and understand. And I think one of the challenges I wonder about with government is, and whether it be the private sector working with the public sector or vice versa, is new technology breakthroughs are coming through all the time, one of which can make any of the past technology obsolete. We could be focusing years and tens of millions of dollars on rail, and we could have something come through which will render all of that useless or pointless. So I do wonder, and I would open this up to anybody on the panel who has thoughts on this, is just how can the public and private sector be brave about pursuing new technology to answer problems when people in my position will beat you up relentlessly if you end up being wrong about it?
Stop beating us up, people in your position. And so in order to move forward, you have to take risk. And as the Mayor Suarez says, politicians are adverse to risk because of, if it doesn't pan out, they're going to be crucified, right? And as a politician, you have to have a spine, and you're going to say, look, I believe this is the right thing to do, and this is what I believe in, and then move forward. I've had this debate about trains and other things, and just because I can see things coming that may make some of the things we want to do now obsolete. And so do I want to saddle my children and grandchildren with a cost of something they're not even going to be using? That's a difficult call, all right? And so I don't have the answer to that, but it certainly is a question in my mind. Before we embark on major investments, we have to see what is lying ahead, what is just over the horizon. You know, if you asked a politician in 1900, hey, we probably need to invest a heck of a lot more in hay farms. We don't have enough hay farms because, you know, all these horses need to eat, right? But in 3 years, people were flying, and there's this great picture of 7th Avenue in New York in 1900. The question that you ask is, hey, where is the car? There is a car there, one. 14 years later, same picture, same place. Question now is, where's the horse? That's how quickly that happened. And by the way, in 1900, things didn't change that quickly, all right? Things are going to be changing today at a much more rapid pace. Artificial intelligence, it's in its infancy. What that's going to bring, God knows, but I know it's going to bring a lot of change. Autonomous vehicles, autonomy, robotics, medicine, all that is about to have dramatic changes. And so you have to have almost like a crystal ball, but you got to talk to the private sector. What are you guys working on, all right? And is it viable to what we want to do? And government officials have to be less risk adverse, and the people have to understand that every once in a while they're going to make a wrong call, just like we all do, because nobody here is perfect, okay? And we're not. So that's what we need to do, a little bit more understanding on everybody's part.
Desde Argentina estamos en un momento de inversión muy fuerte en el transporte. Como bien saben, venimos de una gestión anterior que no tenía el mismo paradigma de trabajo que tenemos nosotros, con lo cual la inversión está siendo muy fuerte. Esa inversión permite que los ciudadanos tengan mejores formas de llegar a sus trabajos, mejores formas de trasladarse. Todo eso nos está generando no solamente una infraestructura mucho más interesante, sino también información que estamos empezando a recolectar que antes no teníamos. Y eso nos permite empezar a generar con inteligencia artificial mucha información de cómo aplicar esos datos en políticas claras de transporte, tanto a nivel naviero, trenes o servicio público de transporte. El punto esencial que estamos viendo en diferentes áreas, en el caso mío de educación más precisamente, es que la información que deberemos resguardar como Poder Ejecutivo y como políticos tiene que estar perfectamente blindada. Y escuché a todos los panelistas hablar de aplicaciones tecnológicas, de aplicación del hardware, algo del dato, pero tenemos que empezar a trabajar y buscar en las tecnologías emergentes como la inteligencia artificial o el blockchain, que maneja las criptomonedas, transparencia que nos permita tener esos datos resguardados y poder generar con ese mismo dato predicción que podamos aplicar en las políticas. Ese es el aspecto que estamos trabajando muy fuertemente en Argentina.
Basically, he said that in Argentina, they're investing a tremendous amount of money on transportation. But what they're trying to do is use artificial intelligence and other means to make those decisions better and to make them in a more educated fashion. And so that's what they're focusing on, is making sure that to the extent that they have to make these large-scale investments, they're being done with the best analytics possible.
Mr. Lopez-Cantera?
I just wanted to say that the engagement from the entrepreneurial, innovative crowd that's here today with government, not just when government is in its way, but in anticipation of government getting in its way, would be helpful. I don't need to tell you, Mr. Cohen could probably talk to you about the 2+ years it took to get regulations for ride shares here in Miami-Dade County. Much to the mayor's frustration, I remember, but it took 2+ years to get regulations just to allow them to operate. I'm glad that the rideshare companies used their technology, their applications, their app to leverage communication with their riders, with their customers, and notified them, hey, county commission meeting coming up, support, or because of county regulations, we are unable to. Whatever it is, but engaging before government becomes an obstacle, because if there's something, and maybe I'm a cynic, but if there's something that that concerns me, is that government is now incapable of moving as quickly as technology does. It is incapable of thinking as quickly as all of you are thinking. And it is incapable of solving problems the way that you are able to solve problems. So at the very least, engaging with them while you're figuring out that problem, predicting to them that you're going to solve the problem so that they don't become a problem for you to solve that problem, is something that this group, this audience, and beyond should, and I hope will do, and I will be doing my part in the private sector come next year to help in that regard.
Well, I'll try to say in English, but smart cities, in our case, is Smart Island, means empowered citizen to be informed, of course, to include technology, but in especially transparency. All the public resources has to be clear. People has to know where the money is go. No, this is one another. And for sustainable, it's the goal. No, water, energy, and of course, a safe community means to get the. They know that all the government is doing, together with the private sector, is to have the best community in the world. That's smart cities.
Can I just add? Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, I think what all of this really speaks to is that we have to cultivate a culture of innovation within government, and that really requires investing in individuals like chief innovation officers, which the city of Miami has, and the resources that they have, these chief data officers, these chief technology officers. We need to have these roles in city government, and we need to staff them and support them so that they can grow the innovation ecosystem within government, because we can't let go of all the staff that is within our cities and counties, right? They have to come along with us as well in order for us to implement these things. So just that culture of innovation within government, somehow, I know a lot of cities are struggling with this, need to be able to find resources to invest in that capacity, because otherwise you can only do pilots. We'll never get beyond piloting things into kind of broader full-scale solutions.
We got 15 seconds.
I agree with everything she just said.
All right, I think we're out of time. Oh, so I appreciate everybody coming, all the panel members. Thank you for giving us your time today. Thank you to the audience for coming and listening.